Welcome to day 1 of week 7. This week what we are going to be focusing on is going to be chapters 4 and chapters 21. For the day 1 video, I'm only going to talk about chapter 4, which is dealing with medical terminology. Now, most medical terminology is derived from the Greek and Latin languages. This is simply because when most of the founding fathers of medicine were coming up, they were speaking those languages. So that's where a lot of our history comes from, is Greek and Latin. It's very important to have a good communication between healthcare and professionals, like we've been learning about. But part of that communication is medical terminology, because we so frequently are going to use that in communication, both with our medical staff, in our charting, and in our patient documentation. As a medical assistant, it is really important to have a basic knowledge of medical terms, but it's really kind of impossible to know every single one and be able to perform it and know exactly every meaning. Now, while it is a challenge to learn a new language, it is really crucial to your profession. So that's why we're going to stress medical terminology a lot to you, and we're going to start using it more frequently. When we discuss medical terms, they're composed of several parts. They're composed of a word root, a prefix, or a suffix. Now, a word root is the part of the word that carries the main meaning. It's a word or an element for which other words can be formed. For example, the word cardio. That is a word root. Cardio means heart. And we can add things to cardio to make it more than that. So the next thing is a prefix. Now, a prefix is a word or an element that gets placed at the beginning or before the root word. The prefix is used to alter or modify the meaning of a word or to create a new one altogether. So, for example, you have the word hypertension. Hyper is the prefix, tension is the root word. So, when we think of hyper, that prefix means elevated or high, and tension refers to your blood pressure. So putting it together, that word means high blood pressure. And you also have a suffix. Now, a prefix goes at the beginning, a suffix will go at the end of the word. And this is a word or an element that comes at the end, and it can alter or modify the meaning of the word root or to create a new word altogether. It can be a syllable or multiple syllables or a group of syllables. So, for example, we have the word cardiology. Cardio, we know, is the root word, and that means heart. So, ology is the suffix. Now, ology means study of. So, anytime you hear ology, that is the study of something. So, if you put that term together, it means the study of the heart. Now, sometimes you're going to have to use a combining vowel before you can join a suffix to the root word or before you can join two root words together. Most of the time, the most common combining vowel that you will use is O, but that does not mean it's the only vowel you will ever use as a combining vowel. The purpose of the combining vowel is really to make a word easier to pronounce. So let's break that down. Let's take a look at it. Let's get an example. So you have the word mammogram. Now, most of us know what a mammogram is, but let's break it down a little bit. Let's look at it in a different light. Mam, or M-A-M-M, is the word root in this sentence, or in this term. And that word root means breast. The suffix gram stands for a record or taking an x-ray. But if I just said mammogram, that's not easy, it's not helpful to say. So we put in that combining vowel O to make it easier to say them. So it just combines the two words together. Mammogram. Now, we don't always have to use a combining vowel. Sometimes we use what we call a combining form. When we're talking about a combining form, you might question, what's the difference between a combining form and a combining vowel? It's a very good question. A combining form is a word root that already has a vowel attached to it, so it does not need a secondary vowel to combine to other words. So let's go back. Let's look at, we had the example earlier, the suffix, when we talked about suffixes, I said cardiology. Now we know that the root word is cardio. Well, cardio already ends in a vowel, so it does not need a secondary vowel to combine to that suffix. So that makes it a combining form. So now that we have broken down words and you understand the parts of the medical term, let's talk about kind of how you pick it apart, how you take words apart and put them back together. So I've kind of been doing this all along in the video. I've been breaking down each word for you that I've given as an example. And the reason that's really important, you can do this not only with medical terms, but you can also do it in your regular everyday English language. I know your book gives a great example of the word telegram. Now that's not something that is a medical term, but it is a term in the English language that you can break down. I always say that you should start with the suffix when you're breaking down a word, because the suffix is generally how you're going to first start that sentence. So when we think about the word cardiology, it was the study of the heart. The suffix came first. And once you know the suffix, you can use that for multiple different words when you see it come up. Then I move to the word root, and that's usually going to be somewhat related to a main body system. So it's going to be easier if you know what the main body systems are, and then you can kind of develop a habit of taking those words apart to help you understand and help build up those words and those patterns and the different meanings within your medical terminology. The last part of this chapter that I want to talk about that I think is really important is to understand how to write and pronounce those different medical terms. When we talk about medical terminology, having the correct spelling, understanding the plurals, and having the correct pronunciation are very important when dealing with medical terminology. When it comes to spelling, it's really important in any language, but it's especially important when we talk about medical terminology. Poor spelling not only reflects poorly on giving good patient care, but it also looks bad on you as a professional. So you want to make sure that you're spelling things correctly so you give off a professional image. But also, if you have a wrong spelling, it can imply a completely different word and a completely different diagnosis. So you always want to make sure that you're using the correct spelling of your medical terminology. Plurals are also going to be really important. What's important to know about plurals is not all medical terms are a singular form. And the plurals of these words don't really come from the English language. They don't follow the English language rules or English grammar rules. What they follow are the Latin rules where this language originally came from. Now, it's really hard for me to explain to you what a plural form looks like. But your book does a really excellent job of giving you a table of some of the most common plural words. So please make sure that you take a look at your book, and table 4-7 will give you that list of plural medical terminology. And the last part is learning how to pronunciate these words correctly. As a medical assistant, you really must learn how to properly say the terms, not only for yourself and how you're going to communicate with the provider, but also how you communicate with the patient, because they're going to hear terms and they're going to go try to look them up, and if it's not the right term, or maybe you didn't say it correctly or pronounce it correctly, they're going to start looking for something that's not there. Alright guys, that's where I'm going to stop for this video. Your chapter does go on to talk about body planes and body systems, but I'm going to leave that for you guys to talk about and read about. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and I will see you on day 1 of week 7. Bye-bye.